This gimbal has a built-in camera for object tracking that has been upgraded with twice the amount of megapixels as the previous generation. And while the older model could only track people, this one can now track any object. Plus, there's lots of other new upgrades and at least one new feature that I'm pretty sure no other gimbal has. This video is sponsored by Hohem, and this is the brand new iSteady M7, Hohem's newest 3-axis gimbal for smartphones. 3-axis gimbals being able to do subject tracking is nothing new, but most other gimbals rely on your phone's camera and your phone's processor to do all of the work for the subject tracking. But all of Hohem's newest gimbals have built-in cameras that allow them to do subject tracking completely independently from your phone. And this really opens up a lot of creative possibilities, especially now that this newest version can track any object. That's so cool. So here's an example of a scenario where I'm taking full advantage of the dedicated tracker, which I have set up to track this microphone here in the background. And that's going to free up my iPhone to do two different things that it normally wouldn't be able to do if the iPhone was doing the tracking. Number one, the view from the iPhone is actually going to get obstructed by some of these foreground objects during the video. But the tracker is going to keep tracking because it has a slightly higher vantage point up here where it can see just over the top of this stuff in the front. And two, I'm actually going to have the iPhone rack focus during the video so that the stuff in the foreground is in focus at the beginning, and then it will change so that the microphone is in focus. And this is something that you couldn't do if the iPhone was doing the tracking because it can't track something that's out of focus. This gimbal has a 1.4-inch OLED touchscreen, which is nice and bright, and it's pretty fast and responsive too. And the one feature that I've never seen on any other gimbal is the fact that this little touchscreen shows a real-time preview of what the AI tracking camera is seeing. And this entire touchscreen and control panel detaches and instantly becomes a remote control. Using the touchscreen, you can specify what objects or person you want the gimbal to track by just double tapping on the screen. This is also really useful when filming yourself using the rear-facing camera on your smartphone because you can't see the smartphone screen when you're doing this, but you can see yourself in this screen, and you can even detach it and use it as a tiny remote monitor for framing up your shots. The touchscreen also makes it really easy to adjust any of the gimbal parameters and settings. This is by far the best UI I've ever used on a gimbal. Gimbals always have this like Morse code system where you push a button once and it does one thing, you press it twice, it'll do something else, sometimes up to like 5 presses to access different functions. And while memorizing all of that will definitely make you faster at operating the gimbal, inevitably you'll forget something, and being able to access all of the different functions on the screen here where it has text and descriptions of everything is way more user-friendly. This has an upgraded 500 gram or just over 1 pound payload capacity, so it can easily carry even the largest flagship smartphones. This has a built-in extension rod that telescopes out. So if you're vlogging and you want to have the camera a little further away from you, you can just extend this out, or maybe you're trying to have a higher view and be able to see out over a crowd at a concert or something. This can come in handy. And this is the first gimbal I've used where this extension rod actually seems pretty sturdy. There's like no flex to this. This is nice and rigid here. I've used other gimbals that have extension rods like this, and they're always super flimsy. Like they're wobbling around a bit and they seem like they're gonna break at any moment. And I like that this one actually seems pretty reliable. The bottom axis motor has 360-degree infinite spin, so you never have to worry about it hitting the rotation limit. There's axis locks on all 3 arms, which is really nice when you're calibrating the balance because you can focus on just balancing one arm and then you can lock it in place, unlock the next arm, and adjust that one, and so on. and just do one at a time instead of trying to manage all three at the same time. There are 3 1/4-20 thread mounts, one on the bottom for attaching the included mini tripod, one here on the side, and another on top for attaching additional accessories. There's a built-in LED light with fully adjustable colors and brightness levels. There's a USB Type-C port on the side for charging the gimbal, and then a second port up here for plugging in and charging your phone. This gimbal can be used for easily filming in either landscape or portrait mode by just manually rotating the phone mount. And if this gimbal arm is ever getting in the way of your shot, like if you're using the ultra-wide lens on your phone and you're seeing this and it's getting in the way, you can either just press the trigger button 4 times or use the on-screen menu to make it flip around to the back. Also, this AI tracking camera can flip around to face in the other direction if you want it to, and the mounting point for this is another thing that has been upgraded since the previous version. On the previous model, there was only magnets holding this on, which could pretty easily come loose and get lost. But with this model, while it does still have the magnets so that it easily snaps into place, it also has 2 little buttons that have to be pressed in order to remove it. Now, one question I have had a lot of people ask me about gimbals that can do object tracking like this is whether or not they can just set it down next to a field and have it track them while they're playing a soccer game, for example. And no, unfortunately, it does not work for that particular scenario because there are limits to how far away you can be and have it still track you. And this will track you up to about 30 feet away, which is pretty impressive, but that's not going to keep track of you while you play an entire soccer game. If you're closer than that though, it does a really great job. Now that does only apply when tracking people, because when tracking objects, it's going to differ a lot depending on the size of the object you're filming. So when filming this Lego, I was about 5 feet away before it stopped tracking, but when I tried to film a car, I was almost 500 feet away before it lost track. And last of all, my favorite thing about this gimbal is the build quality. Every single piece of this seems like it was thoughtfully engineered and made from high quality materials. The first time that I picked this up, I could instantly tell that it was designed to last and be a rugged piece of filmmaking equipment. If you are interested in purchasing this gimbal, there's a link in the description below. As always, you can watch some more of my videos over here, and I'll see you in the next one.